Feeling overwhelmed by the challenges of being a single parent? You are not alone. Welcome to Single Parent Reset. I'm Orla, a life coach for single parents, and I'm here to offer honesty, reassurance, and real tools to help you feel calmer, stronger, and more in charge of your life. If you're a new listener, it is great to have you here and welcome. And if you've listened before, thank you so much for coming back again. I hope your week is going well. For me, as I record, it is now the second week in January, and my son is actually with his dad this week. And as part of it being the beginning of January, I've been doing an exercise of writing a list of gratitude every single day. Yes, I'm falling for that trap of new year, new intentions, all of those things. But hey, what can I say? I'm doing it. And it's funny because one of my intentions or one of my gratitudes for today was that my son was with his dad and I had the week to myself. And instantly, before I even put the pen to the paper, I thought, I can't write that. Like, that's terrible. You don't have your son. You shouldn't be saying you're grateful for it. And it made me realise just one of the many, many things that can come up when you're co-parenting. This idea of feeling guilty for even enjoying time away from your children. Do you know what? It's okay. You are allowed to enjoy the time that you don't have your children. In fact, when you're co-parenting, it's important to look at all the positives that come from it. So for me, for this week, it's been an opportunity to get some rest, but also to get my head down and to get back into work and do things like record this podcast. So yes, of course I miss my son, but I'm not going to feel guilty for the time I don't have him. Anyway, that's just a little side note. Let's talk about this week's episode. So this week's episode, we are going to talk about something that I could talk about all day long. And that is how to not have your career progression pause just because you are a single parent. We are going to look at what to do and what not to do so that you cannot let your single parent status hold you back when it comes to your career. Because if anyone deserves to be stepping into the roles that move their career along and not sideways or backwards, it is single parents. So let's take a breath and reset together. Based on my own experience and research from organisations like Gingerbread and Single Parent Rights, I knew that the situation for single parents in the workplace wasn't that great. A study by Single Parent Rights found that almost 90% of single parents report a lack of flexible working and affordable childcare as key barriers to even entering the workplace. And a shocking 60% have faced discrimination in their workplace. This just isn't right. So last year, I carried out my own research into single parents' experience in the workplace as I wanted to find out more. And the results, they were shocking. And one statistic in particular is one that I cannot move past it. And it is that 50%, that is half of single parents, are not working at a level that reflects their skills or experience. So if you're sitting in a job that you hate, if you know that you're capable of more, but you feel so stuck, if your career feels like it's gone into pause since becoming a single parent, I want you to hear this so loud and so clear. You have done nothing wrong. It is the system that is not set up to support single parents properly. Workplaces, they are still largely designed around this idea of there being two adults in the home, sharing the responsibilities, flexible backup when you need it, and someone else to pick up the slack when your children are sick. And when that's not your reality, it can just feel like the only option is to lower your expectations or to put your career ambitions on hold altogether. Now, of course, there are things that are outside of your control. And yes, there is still a very long way to go before employers really make the changes needed to make work-life balance genuinely accessible for single parents. But today, I want to focus on what is in your control. If you know your potential isn't being fully used, and if you're struggling to see how progression is even possible when single parenting already demands so much of you practically and emotionally, this is going to be the episode for you. So I want to talk a little bit about my own career story so you can learn a little bit about what not to do and what to do and why I'm even here talking about this. So my background is actually in retail merchandising, and I spent over a decade working in retail head offices for several brands. And 5 years ago, when I became a single parent, it was right in the middle of lockdown. And now when I look back, that timing was an absolute blessing in disguise. The world had completely slowed down, and working from home, it gave me the space to process a huge life change without immediately having to face all the logistical challenges of solo parenting alongside a demanding job. And in those early days, I made work work. My son was in nursery, which had longer hours than school, and without a commute, I could manage drop off and pick up without a bother. When my days in the office increased and things started to feel harder, I pinpointed the problem and built a case and negotiated fewer days in the office. And suddenly, everything it felt manageable again. I was content. I'd been in that role since before even having my son, and I had great relationships with my team, and it felt really sustainable. And honestly, I wish I could say this is where the story ends. Everything changed for me when I was approached by a recruiter about a more senior role with a significant pay rise. Now, financially, things they were tight and I was still adjusting, and the opportunity felt too good to turn down. Now, did I properly think through what the role would require? The extra pressure, responsibility, and the time in the office? No, not at all. I handed in my notice, spent the summer celebrating, and worked my 3-month notice period feeling optimistic. But once I actually started that new job, oh my God, did it all come crashing down and fast. Suddenly, I was trying to force a square peg into a round hole. There was more days in the office, a heavier workload, and way more responsibility. I was racing across London every day, constantly watching the clock, always running late. I was absolutely exhausted. I found myself feeling so guilty the evenings where I was rushing bedtime so that I could log back on and finish up work. And at the same time, I felt so guilty at work because I just knew I wasn't performing at the level I was more than capable of. And that was the hardest part. I knew I had so much more to give, but I was barely keeping my head above water. And yet, I put so much pressure on myself to never let any of these cracks show. I didn't want anyone to think I wasn't coping because I was a single mum. I wanted to prove that I could handle it all. So I kept my head down, said yes to everything, and pushed myself straight into burnout. And I started looking for other roles that would allow me to be present for my son and continue progressing in my career. But they just weren't there. And with my confidence at an all-time low, I couldn't even imagine going through interviews and explaining that I needed flexibility. I spent years working towards that level in my career, and yet I had to face a really, really hard truth that this path wasn't viable for me anymore as a single parent. If I wanted to be the mum that I wanted to be, something had to give. And the more I searched, the clearer it became. This wasn't just my problem. This was happening to so many single parents, and no one was talking about it, which led me to the work that I do now. Now, if I look back, I can see there was actually so much I could have done differently to prevent me reaching burnout and crashing out of my career. I blindly tried to move forward in my career exactly as before, without fully acknowledging that my home life had fundamentally changed. I was so focused on financial pressure, which was very real, that all other logic, it just went out the window. I pushed myself into a role that demanded more from me without putting the right support in place and without having the confidence to advocate for myself. I was terrified of being seen as less capable or not managing, so I stayed silent and I paid the price. Now I'm sharing this, which is still a hard story to tell because the wounds, they're so pretty raw from it. It wasn't that long ago. But I'm sharing it because I do not want you to make the same mistakes that I did. So today, we're going to talk about what I would do differently with the insight I have now. How to approach career progression as a single parent without sacrificing your well-being or your confidence, because you do not need to step away from your ambitions to be a good parent. And my own career, yes, it may have taken a dramatic turn, one that actually ultimately did lead me to work that fills me up way more than my previous job ever did. I want you to listen to this today and recognise that there are more options, more support, and more clarity than I ever thought I had at that time, so that you don't end up burning out like I did. Before diving fully into looking at how you can progress yourself in your career as a single parent, I do want to flag, I have done an episode about making work for you around this time last year, but that was looking more broadly at your work situation and figuring out what matters most to you. So today's episode is actually a great follow on from that episode. So if you're feeling like work in general just feels like a bit of a mess right now, I suggest go back and listen to last year's episode, how to create a work life that supports single parenthood first, and then come on to this one, because this episode is for you if you've identified that yes, you know you definitely want change, if you are thinking about a new role, pay rise, or just more balance. This episode is all about being strategic and about noticing all those things that can hide in the shadows when shiny new opportunities come along. So let's look at how you can improve your work situation without hitting burnout like I did, because the goal here is not to push harder, prove anything, or run yourself into the ground trying to keep up with a version of your life that no longer exists. This is all about designing a career that works with your reality as a single parent, not against it. So first of all, let's get clear on the day-to-day realities of changes to your career and your job situation and what they really mean. Because you cannot design a career that works if you're pretending that your constraints as a single parent don't exist. Now, single parenting, it comes with real non-negotiable limits. There's childcare hours, school pickups, energy levels, and emotional bandwidth. Too often, we internalise these things as shortcomings instead of what they really are, structural realities. So instead of fighting them, name them, get clear on what they are. Ask yourself, what are the hours I can realistically work? How much commuting can I tolerate? None of this is about lowering your ambition. It's about creating a container where your ambition can survive. Working within your limits, this isn't about settling. This is about a sustainable way to perform at your best, especially when you're the only adult having to hold it all together. Now, if you are thinking about a new role, a promotion, or higher paid opportunity, it's important to take this one step further. Imagine yourself working a typical week in that role and ask yourself, what impact would this change have on my day-to-day routine? Where are the gaps? And who or what can help fill them? For example, if you're going to be working longer hours and have less time at home, could you outsource things like perhaps getting a cleaner once a week to take off the pressure of household chores? Could you look into extending your wraparound childcare? Could you look into dinner meal box subscriptions so that dinner doesn't become a stress point? Could a friend or a family member help with school runs or pickups? Do you need to adjust your co-parenting arrangements? Or maybe is there extra emotional support that you might need while transitioning into a new role, talking through your worries so that you don't carry the weight all alone? Everyone's day-to-day is different and everyone's routines is different, and some people's non-negotiables will be different to others. But what is important is really pinning down what is the reality going to be of taking on this new role? What impact does it have on my current routines and what changes would I have to make? There may be sacrifices. What are the sacrifices that you're willing to make? The key here is to approach all of this strategically, like you are the CEO of your household. What tasks need to be shifted, outsourced, or deprioritised to make this transition possible? For me, looking back, I realise now that if I had paused and considered the real impact of taking a higher paid role, there were so many ways I could have eased the pressure before saying yes. This step of mapping out your constraints, support you need, and what trade-offs you're going to have to make is the difference between thriving in a new role and just surviving it. Now that you've been thinking honestly about what your realities are, the hours you can realistically work, your energy levels, commuting limits, and the gaps a new role might create, the next step is building a support system around you. This is the time to lean on your family and friends, people who can give you practical help, advice, or simply listen without judgment. You do not need to be carrying everything alone. Having support makes these transitions so much smoother. Now, for me, this is something I absolutely did not do. In fact, I did the complete opposite. I let the weight, worry, stress, and anxiety mount on my shoulders silently, not wanting to burden anyone. After all, this was only about 18 months on from my separation, and I'd already leaned heavily on my friends the previous year. A new job not working out, there was absolutely no way I thought I could bring that normal concern to the table. Everyone else seems to start new jobs all the time and they manage fine. I felt like a complete failure and I kept it all to myself. And well, we all know how that turned out for me. It was a real lesson for me actually on the journey of single parenting. There's no end point where everything is suddenly fine. Life, it's going to keep throwing up challenges. And when you're doing it all alone, you truly cannot do it alone. The real way to succeed as a single parent is to build a support system that you can lean on. So what is getting in the way of us really reaching out? So often, it's hyper-independence. Do you feel like if you ask for help, your mask will slip and everyone will see that you're struggling? So many single parents I work with carry this fear and they overcompensate at work, taking on way more than is sustainable. But I want you to hear this. Needing support, it is not a failure. Asking for help, whether with your childcare, household tasks, or career guidance even. It is actually a strategic move. It creates a space to show up fully in your career and as a parent. Think of it this way. You're not asking for a handout. You're designing a system that lets you perform at your best. Support, it is absolutely not a weakness. It's a tool, a resource, and sometimes the very things that makes a big career move possible. Next thing I want to talk about is money. Now, when it comes to finances, it can feel easier just to bury your heads in the sand and just hope for the best, especially when you're a single parent and it really does feel like the odds are stacked against you. And your financial situation may have drastically changed over the past few years since becoming a single parent. But it is so important that no matter what your financial situation is, that you are on top of it, that you know that your numbers, you know what's coming in and you know what's going out. And I know it can be scary and mundane at times, but it is so necessary, especially when you are considering a change at work. So when you are considering a new work opportunity, along with the logistical side of things that we have just discussed, it is also important to look at the financial impact too. So financially, some questions that you might want to be considering here. Let's say, for example, you are considering taking a promotion. Pause and think really carefully about what would you actually do with the extra money. Would a pay rise go straight back into the things that you are already taking up with your time and energy? So what I mean by this is, if the new role comes along with longer hours, will the extra money just go towards extra childcare, after school clubs, or paying for a cleaner, different things like that you no longer have time for? You may find that once you consider all the things, that pay rise, it nets out to nothing extra each month. Another question when it comes to considering something that's going to bring more money to you is, does the additional money you'll see each month truly equate the trade-offs that you need to make elsewhere? Now, only you can answer this. This is all about your values and what's most important to you. Getting clear on these can help you answer this question with clarity. This just gives you an idea of some of the questions that you can ask yourself, and it's answering these questions that can help you see whether promotion, pay rise, or pay cut truly improves your life, not just your bank balance. So mapping out the trade-offs and real-life impacts gives you the clarity and ensures any career move actually supports your time, energy, and your family priorities. You're not just chasing more money, you're designing a role and a routine that works for you and your family. With your financial and logistical realities mapped, the next step is your mindset and action, knowing your value and advocating for yourself. However, before you can even advocate effectively, it is so crucial that you separate your worth from your capacity. I want you to hear this. Your capacity, yes, may have changed. Maybe you're working fewer hours, juggling more responsibilities, or managing unpredictable childcare. But your value, that has not. If your confidence has taken a hit, it doesn't mean you've lost your ability. So often, it just means you've been operating in an environment that no longer fits you. So I want you to hear that loud and clear. Your capacity in the workplace may have changed, but your work and your value has not. Being a single parent, it doesn't erase your experience. If anything, it enhances it. You bring skills that most others don't. You can multitask like no one else. Crisis management, you're all over it. Empathy, you have it in bucket loads. And problem solving, not an issue for you, even under pressure. Understanding your true value and all that you bring to an employer is the first step in advocating for yourself with confidence. Many single parents, they really hesitate to speak up because they fear being seen as less committed or capable. But you are none of these things. You are merely a valued member of the team who is asking for reasonable adjustments so that they can do their job well. So things that this might sound like is phrases such as, I'm most productive with my predictable office days. I'd like to talk about how I can continue delivering at a high level with more flexibility. Start small. One conversation, one boundary, one clear ask. I want you to have a think now and look at this time next year. Do you want to be in the same role? If your answer is no, now is the time to get clear on your options and your actions. You're not going to magically change your situation overnight, but with focus, support, and small steps, you can get there. Knowing your value, Owning your accomplishments and advocating strategically sets the foundation for sustainable change and meaningful progress in your career, progress that you more than deserve. Being a single parent, it does not mean that you have to choose between a career that fulfills you and the family that you love. With clarity, courage, and support, I'm telling you now, you absolutely can create a career that fits your life. You don't have to figure it all out alone. Remember, you can lean on people and the support system around you. So looking at your career, is there a change that you'd like to make? And what is one you'd like to make? And what is one small step you could make towards that change today? And if this is an area that has been on the list and you really need some support in, please get in touch with me today and I can tell you all about the one-to-one coaching that I do. Or if you're thinking your workplace could be a whole lot more supportive to single parents, please also get in touch with me. I go into workplaces, I talk to them about what support really looks like for single parents and how to start implementing it. And I'm on a mission to really make this change so that single parents are not being left behind in the career ladder and are working at a level that truly matches their skills and experience. After my own experience and knowing so many other single parents have experienced something similar, I cannot tell you how much I'm on a mission to make a change in this area. I do not want single parents to be sitting in jobs that do not match their skills and experience when they know that their potential is being wasted. So get in touch with me if you want to hear more about how I can work with your workplace. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. You've given yourself this time today just for you to think about you and where you are at. And that is a step in the right direction. Looking forward to speaking to you all next week. And in the meantime, have a good week.